All right, this is Curly Castro. You listening to the leafiest, the greeniest, the cabbage hip hop podcast, where you might find a movie that you never thought in your life you would watch, and then you talk about it.
Gary,
Yes, Jeff.
this movie's fascinating, Gary.
It's a curious one.
I watched it twice, and I don't know if I'm ready to call it anything other than a movie. I don't want to put a descriptor on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good
No,
by any stretch of the imagination. Not a good movie.
no, I wouldn't call it a good movie.
But to call it bad would be to ignore some really cool things that this represents.
I'm also not ready to call this a good bad movie just yet. I'm a little hesitant to brand it with that. I feel like this is going to benefit from some sort of some discussion. So,
I'm glad that I wouldn't have to vote on this in the end per se.
mm.
Like if this was part of the battle, which I think I didn't look up the RT score because I don't have to anymore, but I think it would probably be pretty bad.
Yeah, it was not a great one. It was a pretty
Ebert
pitiful.
liked it.
Ebert liked it, but it's still 24%.
Yeah. He was the only one that was like, whatever. He blew stuff up. It was red.
But
basically, he was like, I had a fun time. I love that guy.
Ebert has sort of had this affinity for the kind of like the B movie in
Campy.
ways that,
Yeah,
that
he likes
other critics did not. So like the person who wrote about it at the Times was like just brutal, and a lot of other places were not kind to this film, which is why again 24% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I get it. But like, okay, so this storyline, the way it's constructed at the very end, basically, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, you really don't need to. The film ends with a we're revealed that on Earth there is a cartel that runs everything, and that they are transmitting somehow with a board of bureaucrats that report to the cartel what's going on. And they throw this casual line out at the end that really got me, where you get this hour and a half long story, and this woman basically turns to her, the board, the people who are running this shit, and go, we're not going to tell the cartel it's a ghost, right? Like, what are we going to go back to the cartel and tell them it's a ghost? Obviously, now we are fully privy to the idea that this place is going to get overrun. It's airborne, baby. This is over.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to act now just to get out of there. And it reminds me of the story we were told in history classes in North Carolina. Was called the Lost Colony. Do you know the Lost Colony?
Not familiar, no.
The Lost Colony, really quick summation, probably historically inaccurate. I was probably taught incorrectly. But the story is these people came over, they settled in a little area of North Carolina. Everything was like the thing with the colonies, they would start building and they would send message back and be like, all right, come on over. And then people started coming over. And when they arrived, it was totally empty. A ghost town. They had built some things and then they were just gone. And the only clue to the existence of this group of people was an incomplete word carved into a tree.
Wow.
And that sort of sunk in when she said it. I was like, yo, people on Earth won't even know how this happened. There's no way you can explain. Someone coming from Earth isn't going to understand the nuance of this situation, that bodies were used against other bodies by possession. That's not something people really believe all that much.
People who watched this movie didn't even catch that.
No.
I watched this movie over the past 22 years.
You've seen
it
3 times.
Three times. I watched it in 2001. And I gotta say, I didn't understand what was going on. By the third viewing, I had a better sense of what it is. But
yeah,
I mean, I'm just saying, there's no Cliff Notes version of this. This is sort of this baffling situation, or it doesn't add up. It isn't clearly conveyed.
I feel that way about a lot of Carpenter movies. If you think about Myers, you think about Pliskin, and you get incomplete stories. There's not whole stories on these people. You're just sort of airdropped into a situation, And these are the people you're with, love it or leave it.
Sure.
In this case, most people, fair enough, would leave it. But I'm starting to be a buyer, man. This is weird. It's a weird little film.
Well,
Anyway.
we'll get into it.
We got a great guest. Why don't we introduce the guest?
Yeah, let's go introduce the guest.
By that, I mean you introduce the guest.
Yeah, I'll do that. You just sit there
instead of just being high and babbling. I'm very sorry.
Yeah,
listeners, that I subjected you to that ridiculous idea.
It's fine. We're here now. Let's get into the show. All right, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest for today's show. Joining us now is Curly Castro. You likely know him from his work at Backwoodz Studioz, either as a solo artist or as half of the duo ShrapKnel. He's a member of the hip-hop collective known as the Wrecking Crew, with whom he also co-hosts the must-hear Call Out Culture podcast. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up? What's up, peoples? You know what I'm saying? It's Castro, that's all we doing.
We are very happy to have you here. I feel like this is a long time coming. We had Prem Rock on a couple seasons back. He watched maybe one of the worst, possibly the worst movie we've ever.
I think it's the worst movie we ever.
Which one did he do? Which one did he do?
God, what was that thing called?
You know, it's called Bong Water.
Oh, Bong Water. Oh,
that was Jeff's pick of a movie. I like to really just.
All right, you love to throw that out there. You love to throw it out there, like you didn't pick Gigli. Go ahead.
It was Gigli. We had fun.
But how do you find? Fun. You know, I mean, I know a lot of that. I had an extensive VHS collection just filled with, you know, I think I had 2 copies of Virtuosity.
Oh, so, 2 copies.
Yeah, 2 copies. I bought it again.
VHS, you said, or DVD?
Oh yeah, VHS tapes. I got into the DVDs when I was collecting like seasons. So I have like sliders, the whole slider. I have like not Lost.
I'm watching the Tremors show right now.
Wait, where you at? Tremors, what movie? Or the series?
I watched all the movies, and now I'm watching the series.
Man. How many movies did they give us? Like 6, right?
7. They released one during the pandemic, and it was Netflix being like, "We have arrived in the Tremors verse," and everyone was like, "Nobody cares."
He's the one that's been in. They keep hiring him. He's the one with the elephant.
Michael Gross.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been in everything, including the TV show, and you would think he's just like a passing guest. He's the main character of the TV show.
I know it, yeah. I mean, that's
all over Tremors. It's been his life's blood since the beginning.
Oh yeah, no doubt. We don't have to go into it.
No, please not. I only watched the first one. We watched it for the show. I hated it. I don't want to watch any other Tremors movie.
The first one with Bacon and the other whole story. Oh, that was classic.
Yeah, love that movie.
I did not enjoy that film.
Then they changed the monster into the Tremite.
Yeah, man. There's 3 different kinds, and they evolve. Yeah, it's. Anywho, we're gonna talk about Ghosts of Mars. Sorry, I do this to like everyone where I get them started on Tremors, and Gary's like, "Why? Why do we have to fucking talk about Tremors?"
I have the same thing.
Just do your own fucking Tremors show, man. Do your own.
Well, let's do it. All right.
No, you do it. I don't have to be there.
I am curious. I'm curious where we all stand on John Carpenter in general. Are we all like general fans?
I'm a cool fan of Carpenter's. I don't think he's infallible. I think sometimes when you're a fan of directors, you know, Wes Anderson fans, like, oh, everything is perfect. That's not. I don't think that's being.
That's also.
Yeah, I don't think that's being an honest fan of these creators. Like, everything's not perfect. So, like, the fact that you even mentioned Carpenter reminded me that it is a Carpenter, because it doesn't even have like his signature tropes. It seems like, all right, we'll give you our $4 million. That's it. That's all you got. And you got one set. Do whatever you're gonna do. That's what the movie seemed like. So, but yeah, but I like a lot of Carpenter stuff. I can't.
Yeah, it's weird for me. Like, I actually saw a lot of Carpenter's worst movies, or kind of the real box of ones, because like he put out all this stuff in the '90s, stuff like Village of the Damned and In the Mouth of Madness.
Escape like these Mouth of Madness is crazy. I took a date. I took somebody on a date to see that.
A date. Wow.
Yes, see it in Mouth of Madness. I'm still very confused about.
How long have you been married?
She got rid of me. She got rid of me. Quick.
I know what.
I think I was still I was pretty much in high school, probably a senior. Yeah, I took a girl with me to go see that, and she had a look on her face. I had this look, and we didn't really talk about it after.
It's a sign of a good movie. Everyone's just sort of just like silent about the experience.
Mhm.
Not silent
Yeah.
satisfaction, just like
No, just silent.
total confusion.
Not a
So
discussion.
you're in with the classics. You think there's some bad material.
I mean, my take on is I ended up watching a lot of this stuff in reverse. Like I didn't go and see a lot of the like I didn't see the original Assault on Precinct 13 until I was in my 20s. I didn't see.
Sure.
I mean, I only watched The Fog like with you last year, man. Like, I mean, I haven't watched.
I mean, same. That was my
New
first
Fog
time.
at all.
And I
All right, when did
Old
you see
Fog.
the thing?
The Thing. I mean, that I probably saw that in my 20s. I probably saw that in my 20s.
3
But,
years
like,
ago.
on to like a DVD, like watching it later.
Yeah, it was like something where like it was either on TV or on DVD. Like, and same with like shit like Halloween and all that stuff. Like, because I was never a big horror guy, so like I missed a lot of that.
I'm a little older than you are probably, so
Yeah.
I think I saw like the Halloween theme got to me. My dad knew, so he would play it in a room.
Oh, okay.
So I heard it. So sometimes he would trap me because he played in the front TV and then played in the back. I just was stuck in the middle of the apartment, can't move. So I remember maybe Halloween 2. I never went to those theaters to see any Halloween. So like, yeah, Carpenter's like I saw Attack from Escape from New York, but I think I saw that on VHS.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the theater to see that. And then Escape from LA was horrible. So like, Village of the Damned, VHS. Yeah, I think I watched it a lot. I got into VHS really heavy. There was
Okay.
a bootlegger around the corner from me, like literally, like I could walk 2 blocks in New York, and he was 3 for $10. So that way I was able to accumulate a lot of 3 for 10, and I would just get a lot of VHS and watch a lot of those stuff.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I did a lot of video rental. I went and like Jeff has a whole video store history, so there's a lot of things I imagine you saw.
Yeah, like that catch up era. But Village of the Damned, that's the white haired children, right?
Yes,
it is.
I think no, you know what? Maybe I went to the theater and saw it. But you got to think I'm from the era. I grew up in the 80s, 90s. Like you kind of went to the movies with a girl.
Yeah,
right? You know what I'm saying? If you went with your boys, it was because of that specific movie, and you didn't really go by yourself. That was the theme around it.
That's true, and like the stigma of that was weird. Like you went to
the thing
movies
what
by
that would
yourself,
lead you to do, but that would lead you to watch a lot of stuff in your home, or
right?
VHS, because you can't round up 3 of your friends to go watch Ghosts of Mars. And I know we'll get into it. But isn't there like a sister movie to that? Isn't there like another Mars movie that came out at the same time?
Well, there were like 2 more Mars movies that came out before that flopped. One of them was Mission to Mars, which I saw in the theaters on mushrooms, and I know
that one was a better quality. I realized
it was good quality. You had some great actors in that, Don Cheadle's in that. But I remember like my mouth disappeared, and I had spent half the movie in the bathroom.
Now, what was that about? That was more in the scientific Mars realm? That
was scientifically. Yes. And then there was another Mars movie. Jeff, do you know which one that was? It was another Mars movie that flopped hard in that as well. But I don't think.
Why were we so bored with Mars?
Nobody did it right, because the best Mars movie is Total Recall.
Absolutely.
That's the ultimate
fair argument.
Movie. And why didn't you say, let's just take that universe and just redo it? That's it. That's all.
I was so wildly dismissive of like boring Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that I never watched that film until way later, until like 2-3 years ago. And I was like, how? This is incredible. This is like beyond anything that dude ever did.
Paul Verhoeven is a genius. I went to see Total Recall, and I went with my mother, and it twisted her up so much that she made me sit and we watched it again, because she didn't get it, and we sat and watched it 2 straight times. This is when you used to do that stuff. She still didn't get it, so we had to stay. We stayed like 2.5 because she had to watch it again. The third time we watched it, she watched it halfway through, and then she's like, "Okay, we leave." But she was still like, "I don't know if it's a dream or not." But yeah, Total Recall was a total experience. I watched it 2.5 times. I was totally blown away.
What a movie! And Verhoeven, isn't that who did that?
Yeah, Verhoeven. Yeah, absolute
genius.
Yep,
like one of my favorites.
There's something to be said about him and Arnold, because when they don't work with each other, it's different results. But like him and Arnold, very, 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 very good team.
I totally agree. Totally
100%.
Agree. I don't remember what the third Mars movie was off the top of my head. I don't. But that era did have a lot of like space exploration, big Hollywood budgets,
Not
stuff
too
that's
far,
just
not deep space, other than Star Trek, but it was like Mars and
right. The neighboring
asteroids.
space
Yes, like
folks.
around Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. Where the thing
Moons.
with this one, I'm going to ask later. I think we should ask whether or not we really loved this movie or not. I'm sure that the answer is going to be no, because it was, for all intents and purposes, a bad film. But so we watched it twice, and I really enjoyed the second watch because I decided not to pay attention to the human survival thing that Carpenter revisits over and over and over and over and over again. And I just focused on like, what's going on Mars? What's happening on Mars? And the answer to me is Mars is not pumped about Earth folks.
No, they don't win. Like that's the hope. They don't win at the end. It's the slow fade, slow motion. And Martians are still taking over bases. They don't win. Like
Nope.
you know,
it's a really like, it's a brutal film in its making and in its like presentation and what actually happens.
there's a lot
It's
of
all
brutal
pretty
schemes. If anybody knows about architecture, like those stone type structures, and they said that was ancient, and then also I don't know who's delivered, but they made the Martians or people possessed by the Mars dust. They didn't speak English. They were intelligible. They were just screaming and grunting. They didn't say a word. They didn't say a command. They didn't have any type of. I mean, it was very expressive with their body. Like,
right. I feel like that's specifically because they were trying. This is a weird theory, but that they were trying to communicate using human communication tools, and we're kind of bad at it. They don't have the language.
Right.
They don't like download your brain as a computer. They
the
just
main
take
villain,
over this thing and are like, this thing is weird.
Right.
It's why
And
they're slow
talking.
and bad at stuff.
And the main villain dude, he had his main moments were like 3 or 4 different screens. So
the guy that was dressed up like he was in a Misfits cover band,
looking like or in Mad Max.
He has a name.
Hit me, please. I never figured it out.
He didn't tell you. We don't know it. What is
in the credits, he has a name.
Yeah.
And that name is Big Daddy Mars.
Okay,
Big Daddy Mars.
It's the presentation. Yeah. If this is presented like a grindhouse film, like Rodriguez and Tarantino would do,
sure,
then you could go even further. Like you can know his name is Big Daddy Mars. You can put it in big block letters on the screen as on a freeze frame, and then keep going. Like that's like go into it. But it was like the semi-seriousness of Ice Cube's lines. Like but
I mean, he killed that guy. He killed Big Daddy Mars. I said it right, Big Daddy Mars.
Yeah, he said
he killed Big Daddy Mars and said, "Goodbye, you big motherfucker."
That was. Sounded like
that's like
it was
exit
no
Ice Cube.
It was like goodbye.
Exit hero.
We've been fighting him. First of all, he burned him alive, and but he was burning. Like it was funny because when they cut the scene, he was still on fire, and then later he was just smoking and mad, like
shaking it off.
When did he put the fire? Well, I digress. I don't understand atmosphere.
No, exactly. We don't know about that. It's not the same atmosphere as ours. It would take another 10 years or so before they were going to get to that.
Start. We definitely have to start with the first thing, and I'll let y'all continue on.
Right.
The respirators with goggles.
Yes. Yeah, the breathers. They had, and there was a little thing I think associated.
I didn't see the thing. I just saw them put it on their head.
I saw it like once. I saw it like once in the whole film.
A filter, because it's like 90% Earth's air, so they just have to filter out what pollutants they haven't figured out yet, right?
Yeah,
because that's all they are changing the air. Okay. They were terraforming because she said
84%, 84% terraforming.
This movie breezes over the like coolest facts about Mars in like the first just like 5 seconds. They're like, here's a bunch of cool, interesting shit.
Well,
that's the last time you'll ever have to worry about that. Now it's a war zone.
They only had Pam Grier and Retainer for a day.
So,
they had it for one day. They had to because the fake cut it. I was like, when did this happen? When did this happen?
I'll go check it out. Bye. We'll never see her again.
And it's like Pam Grier was doing work at that time, but she wasn't like that busy. They couldn't be like
and she had some horrible lines. She probably didn't have a script. She did. That was a one-day shoot. She didn't have a script. She just talked. She just spoke how she wanted to. It feels like some Brando shit.
When you think about it, there's really only a handful of scenes that she's in that are very compressed. She's on the train. She's there when they get on the ground for the first time. She shows up at the precinct once, and she shows up at the bar that everyone's hanging from the ceiling with no heads on. And so
Yep.
then
Okay.
you don't see how she dies. I mean, we know how she
we
dies.
don't get a
because
Pam Grier death scene,
No, it's just like
which is
then it's just
to
gone.
me,
Because when the girl was running with her head, I thought that was Pam Grier running,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the girl, and that
to
was
be
it.
fair,
One
we
day.
kind of get some where they like, I mean, she does where we do get where she smashes the head down.
On the pike,
Right,
yeah.
but we don't know
on a
when she
pike
encountered
or
that
whatever.
girl, when her head was cut
No, we
off.
didn't get a true death scene, but we did get
No.
some craziness.
Got a gnarly. I mean, and
Some
that,
gore.
and the funny thing was that CGI wasn't too bad.
Uh-uh.
That practicality. She didn't look like a mannequin.
Yeah, I think like the practical special effects is something where, I mean, given Carpenter's history, if he always worked with, like, he's used to that sort of thing more so than like actual CGI type stuff. And that's part of where this movie fails on some of the visuals, is that it could have used some actual
Definitely
CGI
could've used
stuff.
them. Like, I mean, like,
Well,
when,
it was
you know,
expensive at the
backgrounds.
time, though, right?
I mean, yeah, but just some of the things they're trying to do in terms of the way they did the kills and the action shots, like having
no, totally.
and also just the drabness of the set and just that pervasive
that
drabness
same
of the
type
set.
of red set. The train scene, it was very slow. Obviously, that was a miniature. Like, that's what I'm
Yes.
saying. Use Total Recall. Use those backgrounds. There's no background to that. It's dark and there's
No.
lightning strikes. There's no
This was
background
designed
whatsoever.
by one of the set designers of Star Trek.
And it probably, I bet you
So
money,
it was wildly simple.
it was a reused set.
Yeah,
I guarantee we could find a Star Trek episode with a couple of those.
makes sense to me.
I mean, look, it's very clear that that they didn't spend a lot on the set. They didn't spend a lot on that. I think practical effects are where they spent the most. So basically, how many times they showed someone's head coming off or getting slashed in the neck.
There was a bunch of those. There was a bunch of decapitations.
And that's
all of the,
that's
all the
practical
cops got
effects.
decapitated a bunch.
Yeah.
We lose the rookie cop that way, and it's a shame that rookie cop was only 50 years away from retirement.
She was always staring off into the distance, not following orders. And she was doing a thing at the end.
Yeah,
with the two guns. She was two double fisting it. And
that was a big loss for that team.
And then a bustle came because she was actually capable. She was holding them off.
Right.
And then here comes some.
I love they deputized the prisoners and were like, all right, get ready to die. And they did.
Well, first off, we know that Shorty in a leather clad, she had lines that were cut. Because there was no reason for her to be clad in that and be all, gung-ho in the prison and not say a word. She had lines that were cut. She definitely had lines or a moment. And then my thing is, like, I'm not saying, forgive me, but she was a little more sexualized. So why didn't Statham kind of keep trying to mess with her? I couldn't stand that part, him trying to have sex with the girl.
There's a number of times in this film where the moment and the gravity of the film gets sucked out by somebody needlessly hitting on somebody really hard.
Yes.
Even though they've been in the same place together for obviously a train ride, at least.
Yes.
They've been together.
When he pulled her into the room, I was annoyed.
It's that was okay. Like the second time she is initiating sort of a back and forth and like making sure he understands that this shit ain't happening. Third time it was just like, what is the need of this? Just have him present the room as the room and let's get ready to fight these fucking misfit looking motherfuckers.
But he did wear her down. He did wear her down.
He kissed them and then an explosion came and then
but
it was just
coitus interruptus.
Also Pam Grier jumps in from
Sexual
a place
harassment.
of authority and is like, makes a pass, is rebuffed, and is like, you don't have to tell me twice. Then Jason Statham is like, well, you do have to tell me over and over and over again. It's a weird film.
I think it was a way to get him to say something clever.
Yeah. I mean, it's also the reality of just like they're trying to present this again. They make that very clear in the opening screens that this is a matriarchy, it's a women-led society that they live in the 22nd century. And it's just like, but yet you still have guys being like persistently creepy assholes.
Yes.
Like that does not change.
Just
that
say the other guy the tall guy was pretty direct. He was following orders.
Yeah.
And
Descanso, but that's because Descanso was in real life actually was in a relationship with Natasha Henstridge. So I guess he didn't really need to.
But they cut his arm off at that, right?
Yes.
He didn't get in when they retreated, he was shooting with the gun. But then who was the other guy that popped up? It seemed like they just made another cop out of nowhere.
I mean,
Like,
they killed a lot of people that were not significant presences in the film.
yeah,
Right.
It's like even when they added in Ice Cube's crew, obviously you got to talk about Ice Cube, obviously.
they went
But when
too
they brought
quick.
in Ice Cube's crew, Uno Dos Tres, like Uno was the only one who really had any sort of development, which then you
Right.
later learn is because he was Ice Cube's brother.
We learned from
A
Trey's time.
throwaway
We learned-
fact. No, sorry.
And
A throwaway fact.
Dose got that was a waste. Because I like that actor. He cut his finger off because he was high, whatever.
Oh
and,
yeah, on that.
and he's like he's
on
useless. He can't. Then he can't
What
do the
was
fruit
that
can
scene?
grenade. He can't do the fruit can grenades because his head is messed up. Come on,
No,
man.
and also like just for a little bit of fun fact, so that's Lobo Sebastian playing Dose
Yes.
in a reunion with his Next Friday co-star,
Right.
Ice Cube. He was Low Joker in Next Friday.
Yes, he was. He
Right.
looked so much shorter. I think they did some effective stuff on it.
And like and as much as like John Carpenter like just subsequently tried to defend this film and sort of be like I thought people would find this funny. We were trying to be funny. Like that's one of the only scenes that's actually funny to me. It's a darkly humorous scene, but like when he's so high and he has the machete, he's trying to impress that inmate that he.
But when you're trying
chops
to
his
be
hand.
funny, you see the zipper. Like
Yeah.
that's when it definitely doesn't work. When you're trying to be funny, it doesn't work. Like Mel Brooks movies don't have a laugh track, but you crack up. Now, if they made it a sitcom with a laugh track, you kind of maybe it changes the comedy. You know what I'm saying? Like so, yeah. I think if he was trying to be funny, my thing that's what I'm saying. That he should have just went for it. You got Ice Cube with the two Uzis.
Maybe John Carpenter at that time just wasn't like very funny. You know what I mean? This might just be a failing. Like, think about the movies that you watch. There's very little real levity in Halloween.
There's a skill in
Total Recall. It's very
like,
action oriented.
But there's a skill in making something like slightly funny, like
totally
fact.
agree. I
You know
don't
what I'm saying?
think
Like
that
the fact
skill
is-
with the screenwriting that was happening here, the skill just wasn't there. Because if he claims to have been trying, it just wasn't a very funny film.
Poor effort. It wasn't funny. It
wasn't like it just wasn't like it's very serious. This is a grim situation.
cliches all about.
I will say I
cliches all over the
laughed
place.
at the fact that we essentially just had like a Rammstein music video in the middle
True.
where everyone just danced around to metal music and covered themselves in human blood.
That soundtrack is wild. That's John
Oh,
Carpenter with like Buckethead and fucking like one of the guys from the Cars, Elliot Easton is on that soundtrack,
Yeah,
and then
he played,
fucking Anthrax is in that mix, and then fucking Robin Fink
and Carpenter himself.
Robin
Carpenter
Fink
played,
of Nine Inch Nails is in this thing. So like, oh, this sounds like a shitty like
Apparently, if you
industrial
throw all
cover
that
band.
together, you get Rammstein.
You get discount Rammstein.
All right, everybody.
It's a fucking mess. It's a fucking mess in a lot of ways.
Right.
And it's sort of like it's the end of a really good streak. Like, forget about Carpenter for a moment. End of a really good streak for Ice Cube. Like, by this point, he had been in film for a decade, beginning with 91 with Boys in the Hood, and then all these notable films: Trespass in 92, Friday in 95, Anaconda in 97, Three Kings in 99, and then Next Friday in 2000. Like, so many of those films are enjoyable, and some of them are classic. Some of those are iconic, and his performances. Like, I mean, I recently rewatched.
I mean, that's the reason he was the studio's choice.
Yeah,
they wanted Statham was going to be the main star, and they put Ice Cube there because they were like, this dude is wildly popular. You know, it can't just be only white people on this planet. Let's, we got to do something about that.
Ice Cube was bankable. He was a bankable star.
Three Kings was really, really a try.
Yeah, I think after Three Kings, David O. Russell, like you get to like, all right, like this, he's third billed in that lineup only because the other two actors were, had done more quote unquote Hollywood, if you will.
Right.
But like he carries that film in so many ways.
He does.
He's so well in that. He does.
But then wait, doesn't he get off the back of this? Doesn't he get the be in the Triple X sequel?
Yeah, he gets tons of work after this.
Which
like
is
he continues
really
to
atrocious film.
Bad, yeah, but it's like weird to switch from Diesel to him, but to make him the thought that he was a viable action star for a second.
Right. Well, yeah, all about the Benjamins. So he does that with Mike Epps, and so now they're in that sort of like action buddy comedy mode.
Action buddy comedy.
So he can do that. Then he does something like triple X, and he can do that. And then then he just can do anything he wants. Then he can do a family film.
But then he started doing a lot of the family film. Right?
Are you there? Are we there yet?
Yeah,
And stuff like that. Yeah. And he can do that at that point. There's no reason for him not to, because he's at that stage. Like, I mean, you think about not, I don't think it's 1-to-1, but it's just like, think about Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy did a lot of comedy films that were for a grown-up audience, R-rated comedies. And then at some stage, I guess after Harlem Nights, we talked about Harlem Nights on an earlier episode. After Harlem Nights, it's just like he went, well, you know what? I think after the failure of Pluto Nash, he's just like, kids movies.
Yep.
He also
Daddy Daycare, Shrek, and all that stuff.
He said something about he wanted his children to see him more often than they were of that age.
But also he had that like quote unquote wild occurrence where he was
the tabloid stuff.
He was shamed, and he was like at the top of the shame game for a long time. He took a lot of hits for that.
But it was interesting because he was a nightlife guy.
Yeah,
so like that incident to me with the girl with the trans with the trans woman. The trans woman. But that to me was part of that nightlife thing. That's how I took it. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's like getting caught. If they got caught with coke, it was the same, like similar things. But you're right, that didn't hang. But I don't think it stopped it. But I wonder if
I think that doing family movies at that point, you know, it's gonna help. It's gonna do more for you than, you know what I'm saying?
PR,
and I don't mean to sound like you, but I think that was just like the way things were going. The movies were failing, you know.
Well, I heard
that didn't really exist with Cube until this. What you're saying is that the arc is very similar. That this
I remember Harlem Nights in particular. It was a lot of work. He said that he directed it. He didn't know it was that type of
exactly.
No, totally. We did talk about that.
And he was totally overwhelmed with that. He says that.
Yeah, he wanted it to be like just like a hang with all these comedy people he loved, and it was like way more work than he thought it was going to be. And like I remember he went on like Arsenio and said like, and they were like, "You could do this." He's like, "I don't want to." I guess
he said he'll never do it again. I mean, I think he's directed since, but he's like it took a while.
Yeah. It was his own. It was actually the only film he's ever directed.
Yeah.
I mean, she's produced plenty of stuff.
I'm pretty sure he had more hand in coming to America. He was doing that.
But he doesn't want to be in charge of that. He doesn't want to be in charge of
like,
that.
One time
he didn't like it at all.
It's like Magic Johnson. He was a head coach. Now I'm gonna do it once.
Exactly. No, I think the arc is what's interesting, because like for somebody like Cube who played these very confrontational roles and these very macho roles,
right?
Like Shift and Torque. Yeah, sure. Oh God, Torque. I remember Torque very well. I wrote an article for Vice about Torque.
That's crazy.
Because it was like the Fast and Furious
biker boys.
Yeah.
Torque. And they were supposed to be bicycle versions of Fast and Furious, which
exactly.
Biker boys being the superior.
But Biker Boys had the ill like special effects, right?
Love that movie.
Middle and the freeze.
Yes.
Eat lines.
Biker Boys is a classic killer movie, man.
But Torque had all the best product placement. And all the product placement.
Yeah, and it was Bow Wow and Torque. He was in which one he was in? Bow Wow was in one of them because he was wearing a bandana.
I think I like this movie better than Torque, to be honest.
Torque is rough.
Torque is a rough film to watch, but no, it's interesting.
Biker Boys had all the animation girls. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
out of control. Biker Boys out of control.
But even though, like, I think Ghost of Mars obviously was not a successful film, I think for Cube it was a very logical choice to make. He says,
it made sense. It made sense at that time. Yes,
he says, like in retrospect, it's one of the worst films he's been in, maybe the worst film he's ever been in. But he's like, how was I going to pass up the opportunity with John Carpenter?
Right.
He was a fan. He
enjoyed
John Carpenter.
I mean, they probably didn't shoot things in order, but it's handy. Like I was watching it in the first scene, the dialogue just horrible. Pam Grier's like, I'm like, what is going on? This train is slow. It's just it's a bad place setting. Like you're setting up a plate with your fork and knife. It just looks bad. Presentation is really bad. And then they get there, nobody's there. I'm like, what is going on with this movie? They try to save so much money by there's nobody on set at first.
Yeah. Once Ice Cube shows up, he's like 22 minutes in, which is actually pretty good because a lot of these movies where they put rappers rappers are prominent, like you don't see them till hour 2 sometimes.
All the DMX ones, he was in that first, it was an action scene in the beginning of the movie. He was doing something.
Like, exactly. But like an Ice-T movie, he might not show up till an hour 15 in it.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
if you think about Cube's character through the lens of, okay, so Cube shows up like what, 20 minutes in?
22.
We've gone through. Yeah. Okay.
They have to get to the planet and then
they
and then
do
get
some
to-
things and then he's just there. Think about this as the third part of the Escape series, and that they're going there, and the person who is in that cell is Snake Plissken. That's the way they were talking about it.
Yeah, it lines right up because you have.
That's the way they were talking about him. Is
him being an outlaw?
This dude, like, you truly do not want to turn your back on this dude. He's escaped from both New York and LA. No one's ever no one's ever left both of those cities before.
Or the Pitch Black series, the way they had Vin Diesel as that type of prisoner.
Right.
That reputation. Because even when they
like,
moved
yo,
on
you
to the
cannot
next
have
couple
this
of movies,
man get away.
He was on the planet, still messing people up with the head. Yeah, totally agree.
So I think that's kind of what this was supposed to be.
Well, I have actually some information if you would be interested in knowing. An early version of this script, was originally meant to be a third Escape movie. It was actually supposed to be Snake Plissken.
Was it supposed to be Mars?
I mean Mars, but maybe not 21, whatever. Like I think it's a different version. But the thing is this. Escape from LA is supposed to take place like 2013.
I think it was supposed to be Escape from Earth.
So what happens is, for this idea for Escape from Mars, they tried to get the rights from the studio and they wouldn't give it to him, or at least they wouldn't give it to him for a reasonable price. So he creates Desolation Williams as a character instead. And then Desolation Williams, it was, Jason, as we said before, Jason Statham was going to be that character, and then it ultimately was not, because Ice Cube was available and way more bankable. Jason Statham had only done like Lock, Stock, and Snatch, and had done one other movie, which was another rap movie. It was with Praz and no, it's Turn It Up with Praz and Ja Rule. Came out the year before. I've never seen it. It's definitely something that I have subsequently added to our list.
That sounds like something that would totally be in my wheelhouse. I've never heard of this.
It exists, and it came out before this movie. So it was Jason.
Stay tuned, Cabbages fans.
Is it the one about the school?
And it's the one about the musician. Like they are trying to be, I think he's trying to be a rap artist or a singer or whatever.
Oh, okay. I've seen it once.
So point being, like, Statham had not. This was before the Transporter. Like,
before he started becoming like a leading man of his own, right?
Like he had filmed, like I was reading an interview with him at the time that Ghost of, like a press junket for Ghost of Mars, and Statham was saying that like he had already filmed The One with Jet Li.
Oh, I remember that movie.
I saw that in theaters. I think it was like the same week as the third Star Wars prequel. It came out at the same time, and I went to that instead of the Star Wars movie. So he's in that.
That's funny.
And then a year later, the Transporter comes out, but he talks about the Transporter. People start asking him about it. He's like, I can't really talk about it. I can't really say anything about it.
Because it was a dark horse, because it wasn't bankable. They didn't know it was going to work. I know for sure. They didn't know that was going to work. They were made? They made 3 of them, right?
They made 3, and then they rebooted it.
With a new actor?
New actor, yeah. They did a TV series, and I think they did a 4th movie with a rebooted actor that did not take off.
Yeah, I don't remember the 4th.
But the original, like, it's obviously the first movie. It's Luc Besson, and it's like, so like Jason Statham wasn't there yet, but Ice Cube was 100% there. He was already a bankable star. And so, like, yeah, it makes sense that you put him in that role. But, like, yeah, I think in the same way that, like, a Walter Mosley would create these characters, like an E.C. Rollins, and then come up with a different story, like, Desolation Williams was meant to be a character that Carpenter could use later. I mean, the way this film ends, obviously, sets it up. I wanted to see, as much as I had mixed feelings, and my experience with this film is complicated, and I'll go into that in a sec, but I had mixed feelings about it. Like, I wanted to see the sequel, because what they were about to do, him and Natasha Henstridge, about to kill a bunch of Martians or something.
This was setting up for a classic, wonderful sequel, because the first one has to explain what the fuck is going on with these Mars things. I'm not calling them ghosts. They weren't ghosts.
But they weren't ghosts.
They weren't ghosts. It's not.
No, they were actually Azazel from Denzel's movie. What was the movie? He was the detective, and the occupying spirit was Azazel. He would jump from body to body.
Oh, it jumped from body to body.
Oh shit! What was that called?
Oh, but that's what it reminded me of. They were showing it floating around.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was like, oh, this is Denzel. I love that movie too. I just don't know the movie. Real good.
It's more of a possessor. That's a possessor. And these were possessors as well.
Yeah.
Fallen.
That's
yes.
Right. 98.
That's a fun one. I might watch that tonight. Here's my question. What were there any ghosts of Mars?
No.
Okay.
I
mean,
there was two things. There was the people that were immediately possessed, and then the dust was still floating around. Right. So like there was the dust still floating around.
Apparitions.
It immediately changed their faces.
But
I guess that's a quote unquote ghost apparition because it could occupy your body, but it's loosely sensitive.
So at the end, the woman says, are we to just go to, the council of
the cartel
runs? The cartel. That's what it was. The cartel.
Very
and tell them that there are ghosts. So the earth is now run by cartels. We know that.
And they don't want to stop that money flow. That's what that's right. They tell the cartel.
If we say there's a ghost problem, they're going to be like, fuck out of here.
Leave you up there. Yeah, that's another thing I didn't realize until like the end and then on the train. We didn't leave Mars. The whole movie's on Mars. We didn't go to Earth. We didn't get a transport ship or anything like that. We're on Mars.
Pretty much once you're on Mars, you're not going back. That's what we're kind of learning is like,
and
your problem now.
97% of the film is a flashback.
Yep. She's doing the recount. I'll tell you what happened. And then one time she says, I can tell you what he told me what happened. She was recounting.
Flashback within the flashback.
Right.
Someone else's flashback recounted in the flashback. Oh, it's there's layers.
We were given the benefit of the full story, the dynamic full story. I can't imagine what she was actually saying to these people.
Oh yeah, she was lying definitely about.
Well, there was a little twitch. I didn't actually witness this, but there was a little twitch every time somebody got like exercised or whatever. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
Like,
and also let's not forget,
like that's in there for us, but how she can't tell them that like these people had a tell when they had been like there's no way.
But she's the only one that fought off the possession.
Right.
Yep.
Possessed.
Except well, no, let's say Carpenter's not an amateur. That guy that was trapped in that first room was fighting off the possession a bit.
Yes, he was.
And someone he's like, stay back, and and kept it trapped in there. So yeah, they give a little that can happen, but they go further with her because of the drugs she takes, and she's like, of strong will and mind and body.
Right.
She fights the thing off, which is fine. Then she runs back inside. So the drama of the black and her opening her eyes, and she's still like, now she's possessed, and they're looking over her. That was great, like little scene setup, but they fixed that in like 10 minutes by her.
You know what's great about that scene? Drugs solve everything. They just solve everything.
She's very vulgar. She said people come up here to fuck hoes and do drugs. Oh, when she said that, I was like, okay, that's how I'm movie.
Yeah. The drug is called Clear. And it's the first time we see it, it's sort of like, I guess it's kind of meant to be hallucinogenic, but also like a mild euphoria quality.
I took it as something you take when you have a long flight, because that's what it seemed like. Like she took it because she was traveling.
Yeah, you get a little psychedelic.
That's the first time they traveled of that distance in the spaceship.
Yeah.
Right. I forgot about that part. Yes. What threw me is just when Desolation Williams, the handcuffs, he gets off on the planet. I was like, wait, they're not leaving Mars. This is not like aliens.
He knows that he lives here. Is that if he goes back to a council, they're going to be like, well, obviously you know too much. You're going to jail for whatever.
Well, no, I get that. I get why he loves you. I'm saying like,
but I don't think you can get off. I don't think that
Mars. Yeah, they stayed.
At no time did anyone say we need to get on a ship and get out to like. Nope.
No.
We put these people there to labor, and that's it. And labor disruption is happening.
Can't tell the cartel that. Yeah,
we can't tell them that the labor has stopped because then we got to deal with it.
We don't get any sort of impression that there is any kind of commercial flights, space travel between places. It only seems like the only way that you get there is by working there, by signing up for a 1-year
Yeah.
gig that actually in Mars time means 2 years.
Well, I think that
And we
you
see the
sign up
cops
and that's
spot.
where you are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's further than that. Because like
it seemed like people inhabited there. They didn't go to Mars for vacation or something. Like they just stayed there.
If you're on Mars and you know where there's a place that when it's falling apart and monsters are trying to kill you, a bunch of Glenn Danzigs are running after you. You would say something along the lines of like, if we get to the train, it can take us to Outpost X.
Yes.
And Outpost X has a flight to where my bed is and where my home is and the people I know. Yes. Nobody mentioned that at all. They were just like, this is a problem. And then that's the reason she wants to go back at the end, which is bothersome and weird. He's like, well, we live here. This issue is our issue. We're not
But
leaving.
the doctor did say that the mist follows the train tracks and goes from settlement to settlement.
Right.
So there was that. She mentions that early. So there's that.
Dr. Whitlock, yeah.
Even if that's why she went back, we blow this thing up, maybe they'll stop the dust from keeping it. Didn't stop it. As we see later on, the dust keeps moving, you know. So
yeah.
Right.
I did appreciate that aspect of it. It's like a lot of these films, it's like, okay, eventually the characters figure out how to stop the bad, the alien, the killers, the demons, the mist.
And these two are the first two that have sort of figured it out. And we're about to watch them walk out and like do their thing. And we didn't get a sequel. And that would have been way better than the original.
But also, even at that stage, they still had not made clear how do you stop these things because they couldn't stop them. They were able to deter them for a time.
To stop them was for us to get off the planet because they're on the planet and we're invading the planet. So that the only way to stop it is to leave. But like we said, there's no mention of any type of escaping on a ship.
Nope.
And when she debriefed the council, they don't want to tell the cartel. And what do we see? The next scene, they're being invaded.
And at no point is Natasha Anstrich being like urging them, we have to get off this planet, we have to get away. It's like part of it is like I think she sort of thinks she sort of is making an assumption, which Dr. Whitlock sort of tried to beg her off of that, you know, what we did solve the problem probably. So I'm going to stay, as opposed to we all have to evacuate the planet because these things are coming.
Yes. But it's airborne. You should absolutely just be like, this thing's airborne. I don't know how it works. So we should probably evacuate this planet.
It came out the tunnel with intention. So they could mention winds and things like that, but it came flying out of the tunnel when she broke the seal. It rolls over the mountainside as we see when it comes to the end.
Right.
So it definitely moves with intent.
Yeah, it's a literal Pandora's box situation where it's like you let these
you're not
things
going to get off the planet.
And she says
I'm going to make you a person of the planet. That's what
the woman who accidentally freed them says that. Like this is but like of the things we know, there's no capitalization on them whatsoever. We know the benefit of us. We know that woman was given drugs when she was possessed, and the drugs that are always there for us, they exorcise the demon.
Yes.
But I'm not entirely sure that anyone ever told anyone that. Like that's a big deal.
No, she didn't tell anyone about drugs, period. She didn't tell anyone that council about drugs.
That was a little secret. She kept it in
right. That's something that we got the benefit of, but she's not telling them, oh, my friends came out and dosed me with the drugs that I keep on me all the time.
Yeah.
What was his name? What was Stater's character name? Murdoch? No.
Jericho.
Like Jericho, that's right.
So she withheld what would have been life-saving information, but I think it's too late at that point. Those people are already skeptical of what she was saying, or at least reluctant to take on the full story.
She's basically just not being compliant, and she's not going to give them recommendations because they'll just laugh at her.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you know, it's like. I mean,
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, how often in these situations where it's like if you watch like a horror movie or a sci-fi thing where someone escapes,
right,
and it's like you don't get to see the aftermath.
A big deal in Carpenter's world. Escaping is a big deal.
And think about like not in Carpenter, but in terms of another really in terms of a successful franchise. Think about the Alien movies. The first Alien film is all that stuff happens on the ship, and there's the escape, and then you get to the second movie, and the beginning of the second movie is like they find her pod years later. And they save her, and she tries to explain to these people what she saw and what happened to her and the crew. And like there's skepticism, but there's also like a sense of like, oh, actually, we believe you, from some who have nefarious intent. It's like sort of the cartel of this council that you're seeing.
Yes.
Like there's so
Right.
much room for
The
that.
bureaucracy.
Yeah. So like there's a lore that could exist. And again, it's like the way Carpenter structures this film as flashback within flashback situation that you just
I get
like,
the feeling that a lot of that stuff was, I think we've had some meddlesome note bringers.
You think,
the sync
you think
side.
she was an unreliable narrator because of that interrogation nature?
Oh, I 100. Well, first of all, she's a cop, so the
you can't trust anything she says. So that's
she's
the first
gonna
thing.
like put herself in the best light. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like,
That is true.
Yeah.
hey, listen, he like handcuffed me to this thing. I couldn't do anything about it. He had earned my trust. Like,
Yeah.
whatever, sure. But like somewhere in the real world, there's a version of this that exists where like
Cops
the
lie.
dude did everything and led the team, and she's taking credit for it.
Yeah. The reason they're still alive is because they banded with criminals.
Right.
That's how she's
Right.
still alive.
Oh, that's a classic.
And if they hadn't gone back to try and stop what happened there, a lot more people would have been alive. And the decision was
I
made
can't remember
by a
who was
criminal.
alive when they first got away.
Most of them were. So like at
Uno,
that point,
Dos,
like,
and Trace, was they still? I can't remember that.
so no, we lost Uno, Dos, and Tres in that melee in Act 2,
Right.
where they were
Yes.
all fighting. Which again,
That's where
like,
most
that's
of
fun.
the
That's
most of the
fun.
actors are shed. Like the weight is cut there.
We lose Descanso in that scene. I think
Good.
we lose like the whole fight.
Descanso was worthless.
You
Yeah.
have a problem with that guy.
Yeah, you
I
really
like
did.
that guy.
Yeah.
So you really.
So
Descanso was a piece of
a
shit.
little jealousy, I think, maybe there with the head
What
scrunchie.
jealous of
The
what?
hair,
What
his
do I
hair.
what do I not have that he has?
hairstyle.
He has
really put together.
he
You don't
has
like
two
my hair?
kids. He has 2 kids with Natasha Henstridge. That's what he has that you don't have.
In real life, I do have a petty jealousy thing, and I was glad to see him killed. I'll admit it.
But no, a lot of
Went out with the
characters,
one-arm
a lot of characters, a lot of characters survive. A lot of characters survive that
That
first
first
bit
wave, yeah.
when they
Okay.
They
escape.
do.
Oh
It's
yeah,
when
because
they
they were
go
calling
back.
them to run into the. They were waving all of them into the train.
You had the
rookie was
train,
still there.
the train conductor was still there. I think Robert Carradine was still alive at that point as the train conductor's coffee bringing
Yeah.
assistant.
Yep, they both were still there.
So
The
those guys
rookie
were
was
still
there.
around. Yeah,
Those
So you had-
poor dudes were dragged into a war and murdered mercilessly.
Well, they said when they tried to come back, there was debris on the tracks or something like that.
Mhm.
Like they got
Yeah.
lost on the road.
no,
back.
I mean, like they came back, rescued these people, were heroes for dealing with what they dealt with,
And then they got chopped
and
up.
then they got dragged back into a war and destroyed.
civilians,
Utterly
essentially
destroyed.
civilians. Civilians did not survive. The people who were deputized in the prison did not survive.
Oh, well, they
I-
took our
if
homeboy
Natasha
first
Henstridge
time.
is a
with the
lieutenant
circular
by the
sword.
end of that hearing that we're privy to, then I doubt the veracity of the claims made by this board. I think they should dismantle that board.
Yeah,
Well,
well, they were dismantled.
They were dismantled by the Martians.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
So if you-
Overruled.
It's what we call Martian justice. Martian
You know what I'm
justice.
Is that what we're calling it? Sick.
Martian
The guy
justice.
yelling. That's all it is.
Apparently we read too much about this stuff as we prepare for these episodes, and like apparently the makeup, again, back to practical special effects, the makeup and all the prosthetic stuff that goes into Big Daddy Mars's stuff made it hard for him to speak, which is why so much of his vocalizations is just like because he can't actually talk. Not that they really want him to say words, but like if you're supposed to be conveying a Martian language of some kind to communicate with
Yeah,
other
it can't
people,
just be yells.
the
Oh,
other
well,
Martian-
I
I
would
can
say
tell
this. They
you what
did
he
something good
yelled.
in 90 Days a Night or 30 Days a Night. I can't remember what it's called.
30
but
Days a Night. Yeah.
They have like clicks, but their growls are very specific. If you remember how that went when they were trying to express certain things, they had a certain growl, they had a certain squeal, they had some clicks. So yeah, a little bit more sound design.
I think the difference is that you can tell when there's sort of been care put into that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And this film is fairly careless
Right.
in the way it's been put together. I mean, look, it's a genre mashup that doesn't know what it is at times. It is a pastiche of a
About
lot
60
of other
mil.
Carpenter,
Yeah.
a lot of other Carpenter movies.
Yeah,
You know, this
100%.
taste of Assault on Precinct 13.
This
It's a
reeked
taste
of John
the fog.
Carpenter.
It's the fog,
Yeah.
but now they're Martian microorganisms.
Yep.
This reeked of John Carpenter just being like, I'm up to my old tricks again. Let's run it back one more time, boys. Like it
It's
just
not
there
broke,
was
don't
no.
fix it type.
It was kind of a joyless romp.
There's a Family Guy gag from one of the first few seasons when I still really enjoyed that show, where they're like Stephen King is in his publisher's office. It's one of those little cutaways. And Stephen King's in his publisher's office, and they're like, "What do you got for us?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." And just like, "Oh, come on, we need something." He's like, "How about like an evil stapler?" It's like, we'll take it. You know, like I think it was like after I think John Carpenter's Vampires was the movie he did right before this, which is a fun movie.
Which one was that? It was just
James Woods.
Yeah, and they were like more. Wait, were they like more modernized vampires?
Yeah, they were like modern day vampire hunter things, and like and there was like vampire societies. It's a solid B movie. I would say that's a solid B movie.
Like there's always a place, seemingly when he's at his best.
I want our listeners to know there's always a place. Don't get too. It's always a place for B movies, and this is from a cat grew up with it in the '80s. Direct to video. Like, look, if you like Master P, direct to video. Yeah, that's what that stuff is. If you want to keep up with Steven Seagal, the monster, there's a lot of direct to video. Wesley Snipes has a good chunk of his career direct to video. Vivica Fox is also.
No, look, I mean, we are hardcore defenders of B movies, and good or bad. Like as a category, it's a lot of what we watch, and I think it's you make some really interesting choices. You see some of the directors who do it well, and you see directors who do spottily, but either way, like
who don't know how to direct at all.
There's some of those are really like micro budget directors, micro budget directors, stuff like that. But at the end of the day,
shot. Nope, but never again.
But at the end of the day, it's like and now this is where I want to kind of go talk about specifically my experiences. The first time I saw this was in 2001. I saw this in the theaters, and I went with friends, and I think a girl I was dating as well. I think it was like me, my girlfriend, and like two other friends went to go see this movie one night, and it was like a later showing of it. It was at a 2-screen theater in Queens, and like we walked out of there onto empty streets, and we're just like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck did we watch? And I didn't watch it for another like 22 years.
Right.
And I came back for this show and watched it because I was curious. Right. And when I did the first watch, which was technically my second watch, I got high, I watched it, and I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
And then this morning I got up bright and early and put it on for my final watch. And on my final watch, I was like, I kind of get it. I kind of understand. There are some really bizarre choices. They could definitely benefit from a real CGI special effects budget. It could benefit for some better actor choices in some of these spots. But like, I actually, for the third time, I started to like, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but I started to enjoy myself, to actually enjoy myself watching this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's starting to grow on me.
I'll tell you what, Gary, it's one of the rarest things in the entire podcasting industry. Exact same thing happened to me pretty much. Shit. I didn't get the benefit of watching when I was like 11.
It's just the execute. I just think like if the scenery looked so much better, it would enhance everything that they were saying.
Everything.
All the things they were doing. It would have been
the fact that it looked like a
Firefly.
Science fiction thing from the 60s was not. Yeah. It didn't help much, no.
If it had that Marvel green screen money, then those worlds would have looked extraordinary.
It would look great. Even though it was abandoned, the walls would have looked different. That thing about it, off into the background, into the distance would have looked a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Don't look too closely at any particular aspect of a thing outside, because then you really know you're on a set. It's so obvious you're on a set. It's a messy film, and I'm not saying that anyone should have to watch any movie 3 times in order to like appreciate it, man. But I'm just gonna say, like, as somebody who subjected themselves to it a few times, I started to see its merits. I'm not gonna come out and be its vocal defender and tell people you must watch it. I'm not dying on that fucking hill, but I will say it started to grow on me, and I started to appreciate it as the sort of shoddy B movie that it is.
I will say it does have a nice place in the pantheon of B movies, but I would never give it its props. It was poorly put together, and in the sense that, and this was also the phenomenon back then, when there was 2 movies that were almost identical, I only picked one to kind of like. I didn't like Deep Impact and Armageddon or whatever. I like.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about that on the show with other people where like, you forget that there were like 10 other movies like that at any given time. If it was a Hollywood blockbuster, all of them were going to make a movie about that at the same time.
And sometimes it messes up your memory of the movie, the one that you like, because you'll start blending them.
Right.
And thinking, oh, this happened in that. It was like, no, that was the other one. So it was very
and that third Mars movie that we were trying to remember. So we had Mission to Mars and we have Ghosts of Mars. It's 2000. It was Red Planet with Val Kilmer, Carrie-Anne Moss, and the late Tom Sizemore.
I remember the one where absolutely saying, I'm not seeing that the second I
saw that one. That's the one where the planet actually starts grabbing them with like cyclones or something like that. And they go to see an old ancient structure.
Yeah, it's like
do it properly.
Like a gamma ray thing or something. I don't remember all the details.
A mystic force is at play.
Yeah, that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
But isn't that also in Mission to Mars with Don
Mission to Mars? I forget exactly what the thing is. Again, I did watch it on mushrooms.
Wasn't it like some alien civilization though that they found?
So it could be about anything. And also
I spent half that movie in the bathroom making sure my mouth was still there. I'm just going like,
you lost your mouth. That's so crazy.
It really is what happened. It was one of the most one of the wildest mushroom experiences I've ever had was watching Mission to Mars. So yeah, I think it's it is a forgettable film. It is definitely, when you start ranking Mars movies, it's not going to be your first, and it's definitely nobody's favorite Carpenter film by any stretch. But I think
can I drop a couple of things that make it cool? Because we have been shitting on it, and rightfully so.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it.
There's a lot of bad acting, a lot of terrible sets, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that's super cool is that this movie like identifies the fact that like this thing is native to here and is trying to expel us. Mm-hmm. And we'll go to the lengths of using our own bodies against us. That is a wild concept. It wasn't fleshed out enough, but the second viewing, I really appreciated that a lot. Mm-hmm. That it's not just, oh no, it's a mystical force. You could see it that way, but like they explain a couple of times, like they're from here and they're mad that we're here.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool. And like that added a bit of depth it's hard to get there because you really don't want to listen to the dialogue. It's awful.
Yeah. Really bad.
But if you analyze it, it's not, they hint at some really cool stuff that they just should have extrapolated on. All the interesting stuff in this movie is glossed over quickly because a bunch of Glenn Danzigs are after them.
And it's also because it's presented in monologue form. Like the exposition is presented like, okay, Whitlock is going to explain to you this thing. And it's like, I get it. And like, I'd rather have not known some of this stuff. I'd rather have had a lot more uncertainty about what they were facing, they were
a little more vague.
And more speculation rather than authority.
Like in The Thing, they have a big meeting right away, and they're like, "What do we know about the thing?" Mm-hmm. And they review what they know, and each of them brings like, there's a scientist there, and it's like, "Oh well, actually, I know a whole bunch of things about the thing." But with this, no one ever was like, "Yo, man, what do we know about this?" They would just every now and again. Right.
They never stopped to do any type of scientific.
They never grabbed this woman that knew literally everything and said, "Okay, sit down with me. I'm not gonna like jack you up against a wall. I'm just gonna like sit with you and talk to you about what the fuck is going on."
And that's what's insane about this movie is that like once you as the viewer have a better sense of what's happening than the people, or at least are on the same level as them, understanding, like, okay, so this is how these guys get around. This is how they pass through. Why are you killing people? Why are you killing these Martians?
At no point should you be murdering these Martians.
They should be finding ways to trap them, capture
the body
them,
count
imprison
in this film.
It is crazy. Because they
start a wild body count.
Isn't that how they get rid of Jericho? Don't like 8, 9 of them stab him to death?
Yeah, just fucking go to town on him real zombie style.
Like, he doesn't even get the proper depth. He's just under a pile of Martians stabbing him.
Yeah. Yes. You just see just going at him. Yeah. No, it's like the nonsense of the murdering of Martians by these people. It's like, because that's all we know. Is that it? Like, we don't know how to like figure out a way to put them in a very large hole. Yeah. Put them in a very large hole, perhaps. Like, I don't know. Like,
and look, they blew up a base with a bunch of them on there, and it was still more than enough to attack the next base. So they didn't even get it.
What we learn, and this is the other cool thing, what we learn is that Earth governments on Mars are also useless.
Yeah.
Government is useless, kids. Toss it aside.
Don't tell the cartel.
The cartel. I mean, that line was more chilling than like any body I found in Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Where she was like, "What are we gonna tell the cartel? There's gonna be a bunch of ghosts."
Get the fuck out of here.
Fuck out of here. And that they end the movie basically on a fuck out of here in a way.
Yeah. No. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like the American idea. This is in every single fucking movie. It's just like, we're going to nuke it. We're going to nuke whatever it is. We're going to nuke it.
That's from Alien. That's from Aliens.
And it didn't work. Another thing that's cool about this is that the nuke thing didn't work. Just like the first time.
It's like Godzilla. It's Godzilla.
Yeah.
And they showed it from orbit. They showed it from space. The big blast cloud, mushroom cloud. Yeah. We have to get out the blast radius. And it did not work, Jim. You're right. Did not.
So what did she do? This lieutenant who is responsible for a number of needless deaths has given awful advice from the very start of the film. She just looks at this dude who's like, all right, do you get it now? Do you understand that like we're trapped here and the only thing we can do is survive? And she's like, yep, I do.
Yep. After a nap.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just got some sleep and was like, you know what? The thing I wanted to do all along was just fucking murder people, just slaughter bodies. Yeah. That's what I wanted to do from the start. That's what I'm going to do. I thought that was awesome.
But at the very end, it's like they have learned nothing from their experience. No. Their answer is shoot Martians.
They don't know how to get the Martian entity out of humans and save them, except for her. They do that successfully, but they don't proliferate that. They proliferate. No. Remember, then they had like silver Uzis, like the weaponry was like all shiny and stuff. Like
it finally, so much of that beginning stuff was just so 20th century.
Rusted, and it was definitely Oh yeah, that part too. Yeah, very much the low tech of
I gotta assume in 2176 we got better than whatever automatic weapons we had.
We just sent like the surplus weird old computers up there and said, figure out a system. Someone bring someone smart and figure out how to make these talk to each other.
I have to assume, again, American arrogance or whatever, we have to have figured out better weapons in 100+ years and 150 years.
Dynamite still the only way to cause an explosion.
We're gonna blow things up.
But the drugs terraforming are sick.
And you're still creating a slum up there. It still look like a slum. Why did they do better? You know what I'm saying? They said shoddy materials probably.
Yeah.
Cartel ain't spending top dollar. We know that.
That's real.
Nothing.
That's what I'm saying. Nothing. They gave them all like crap.
Yeah.
Like, look, these things work. Figure out how to do it.
I think that's a metaphor for what John Carpenter is working with. Is here's some crap. Go make something with it. And he said, here you go. Here's the crap I made with your crap.
It's also a terrific metaphor for how like cartels, aka corporations, treat everything.
Recycling.
Here's some crap. Here's some recycled crap. You got to use it until we feel like you should be able to afford the new stuff that will help you.
That would be a much better line for the tagline for the poster than what they actually use, which was, you don't stand a ghost of a chance.
God, that's like, did Percy Bysshe Shelley write that line?
And there's no ghost.
And no ghost comes unto you, kind sir.
Ghosts. Zero ghosts.
No ghosts or ghosts of
no ghosts. Now, you could make an argument that they were getting a lot of weird ghost trains from people escaping the madness.
Oh, I forgot the ghost train thing that they said. It's a ghost train. I forgot that
But
part.
if that's the reason you named it Ghosts of Mars, then that's fucking stupid.
No, that seems like that was a reshoot that they shot after everything.
Right. There was a bunch of that. I believe that there was a bunch of that somewhere in here, this was a very sparse, minimal tale. And then
when Ice Cube ran down the ramp, so it was a slope incline with the two Uzis and kept turning his head. That was the worst. It was like, it just looked like such a set. Like it looked like a set. It looked like a set. He's shooting off screen. We don't know if he's hitting anybody. We don't care. That's not the point. He says he has a line. I mean, like, he said, what are we doing? What we should have done in the first place. That's what he does.
It's so weird that this is Carpenter because like most of his action is like slow moving and paced, and then like
slow motion. There's a lot of slow motion.
There was a lot of slow motion, and then this one,
duck, parry, punch, swipe, throw. Next one.
These were simple creatures they were fighting. They didn't understand how the complexity of the human body they were in.
choreography. They didn't know kung
Right.
fu.
They didn't know. They couldn't just like use the strength of this thing yet.
No.
But I'm telling you, I think those like possessed kind of zombie-ish creatures, once the Martians figure it out, yikes. They're gonna take Mars. I got bad news about the Earth people on Mars. They're taking Mars back, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because everybody that's there that gets possessed comes one of them.
I mean, if the cartel's not going to be informed and the bureaucracy is going to ignore it, it's only going to get worse until it's too bad to do anything about.
But I will say there is some solace to be held. The lo-fi nature of this whole futuristic society. These Martians are not getting to Earth anytime soon. There's no ships. Train is slow. There's no good communication.
No.
So until they get a major giant ship to transport all these, but again, I'm with you, Jeff. We're assuming these Martians, they might not want to go to Earth. They want you.
No, they just want to be on their planet and rule it again. They used to rule it.
Yeah, because they were trapped.
Somehow we're trapped.
The other thing.
Yeah.
Who trapped the red dust in the first
now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I want to know, what does that
with a genetic seal that disintegrates?
What does it say though?
Yeah.
That's a language there. That's why we don't just roll up and touch artifacts, folks.
And it was only on one side, meaning that the dust couldn't touch it on the other side. So that thing was going to be sealed forever because it can't.
As long as a human being doesn't come up and dumb as hell just knock the shit over. We're going to be just fine. Well, guess what? Human beings arrived, and the first thing they did when they found it was knock the shit over and break it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We are the worst, and I am with the Glenn Danzig Warriors.
The Maryland Martians.
Do you think there could have been some diplomacy later on?
No.
All right, we'll stop coming in. They could have talked.
Not with these Maryland Martians. No way.
Maryland Martians. That's a perfect.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Danzig Warriors.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, Gary.
You know what we didn't talk about?
No.
Courtney Love.
We didn't talk about Courtney Love. And there's a connection there.
There sure is. Courtney Love was originally supposed to play Lieutenant Ballard, Natasha Henstridge's part. She was the original pick.
So we just debuted the Tank Girl episode of Ice Tuesdays.
Yep.
Check it. Go buy it.
Please subscribe. Cool $5 a month. You get extra podcasts.
Subscribe, baby.
We talk about Ice-T movies. It's fun.
It's fun. So Tank Girl has a number of weird things. One of which, Courtney Love was cast as a main character and then didn't complete the task. Like didn't end up in the movie.
And then didn't she also have some involvement in she was like the music supervisor or something, or was supposed to be, right?
She was a music supervisor of
Tank
Girl. Because that was what they basically settled on, like you can't do it for obvious reasons. So we still want you to be a part of the film. Why don't you help us like make a soundtrack? In this case, I don't know if she was on that decision-making team. I mean,
the official line is that she had an injury. Her boyfriend at the time.
She was cast as Natasha Henstridge's character.
Yes.
Lieutenant.
And Courtney Love's boyfriend at the time had an ex-wife. And apparently the ex-wife ran over Courtney Love's foot with her car.
Whoa.
And that injury happened during pre-production. And ultimately she was no longer on the picture. And Natasha Henstridge basically like came from doing 2 back-to-back movies and jumped into this role. Like,
dude, it's so wild that we watched 2 straight movies. I don't know that there's another movie really out there that's like, we cast Courtney Love, we started with Courtney Love, and then we didn't use Courtney Love.
It's a bizarre coincidence because it's not
that
like
is
she
a really
did,
weird coincidence.
She didn't do that many movies.
No. And the other thing is these movies both sort of share this. There were meddlesome edits and meddlesome notes from Suits. And like, it wasn't the movie that we should have gotten. I mean, this should have been the third of the Pliskin movies.
Yeah.
I think we covered that pretty well. That like,
we did.
It's not proven per se, but it really was.
Yeah.
Supposed to be like, we should be seeing, a character we know there instead of just someone they keep telling us is a terrible menace.
Yeah, I think the similarities between Desolation Williams and Snake Plissken sort of make that seem like oh yeah, sure. It totally makes sense that there's a version
What was his
of this
full
that's
name?
like that.
Because Desolation's like Desolation was like
it was a
a
nickname.
nickname.
Yeah, nickname. Yeah, because like his actual
Is
name.
it James?
No, I think it was either James or Jason. I forget what it was, but something like that.
James Desolation Williams.
No one's calling him by his first name.
No, I'm not calling him James.
No.
Also, we didn't talk about my favorite line of his that wasn't. Yeah, my favorite. There's two of my favorite lines.
Okay.
One
So
of
my
them
favorite
is,
lines.
I believe in staying alive. She's like, what do you even believe in? And he was like, I believe in staying alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
So sick. And she's like, immediately like, what for? It's such a weird conversation. They have it so flippantly, like, what for?
My favorite line in the film is definitely from Ballard from Natasha Henstridge, Ballard to Jason Statham, Jericho.
Yeah.
She says, maybe I'd sleep with you if you're the last man on Earth, but we're not on Earth.
Right. Thanks for the reminder.
The
other one is when Uno raises his hand. He goes, hey, put your hand down.
Yes.
This guy's like, yeah, good point. He just puts his hand. It's so good. Later, when you learn their brothers, like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
obviously,
that's way funnier. That relationship right there makes more sense when you know, like, oh, they're siblings. Of course, this is the way they would talk to each other. Yeah,
he's how they behave. And also Tank Girl and this were like both weird, desolate wastelands.
In the future,
deserty, futuristic wastelands that were like incomplete and ill-described.
Yep, with
it's
strange characters,
weird pair of movies,
corporatist futures,
yeah,
dystopias. Yeah, totally. You get that. Totally get that.
These were very similar films and had similar flatness because of their mishaps with filmmaking there. I mean,
Tank Girl's more fun.
John Carpenter like quit after this.
He quit. Oh yeah, he basically
they both did really.
He cites that he was burnt out. He kind of cites it. He's like like Natasha Henstridge literally did like production stop because she had actual exhaustion at one point, but like he kind of described and expressed feeling exhausted, feeling worn out by it. So after this process was done and it wasn't well received, he was kind of just like, I'm done. I'm good.
I feel you, dude.
I mean, look, the man had been making movies since like the 70s. Like he didn't need to keep doing it.
The undeniable pressure of being brilliant forever is insane.
He directed only one more film. And it was almost a decade after this one. Just said like, I'm good. I'm good. And directed another film. And now it's like, you know, his properties and things that he did get revived, and he just does like score stuff, and he's got producer credits on things, but like he doesn't want to keep making movies. He's in the way that he was. He's fine. He has a great career.
Well, and I think that sums it up pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's really only one thing left to say, Gary.
And what's that, Jeff?
See you later, you big motherfucker.
It's the Cabbages Podcast Network.